Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan from Boredom Sated. Here we have the whole crew with us today.
Hello.
So, our goal today is we're going to continue something we did a little while ago with saying, is Pathfinder 2 any good? We're going to talk about 5th edition and say, is 5th edition any good? Now, obviously, our opinions are going to be different from some, but we're going to go over it in the similar way that we did with Pathfinder 2, talk about some of the ins and outs of the character creation and combat, compare it to previous editions, other things, and talk about things we like and dislike. Overall, the first thing we want to do is say again, please like and subscribe if you want to see more things like this. If you have any suggestions on other types of things that you've liked before, please leave it in the comments. Let us know. Something like 90% of our viewers are people who are not subscribed, so subscribe, it'll help us out. So, we're going to talk about, is 5th edition any good? The first thing we got to talk about with 5th edition to see is it any good is character creation and customization. So, when you create a character in 5th edition, do you feel good about that? A lot of times you have to wait until like 2nd or 3rd level before you can really do any true customization, which is perfectly fine. But when that comes to play, do you feel like it's any good?
I guess the first couple levels, 1, 2, and then 3, when you actually decide what exactly you're going to specialize in within a class, it's sort of like a trial period, I guess. The flip side of that is, all right, once you've committed to, say, a fighter type, okay, and you have basically 3 or 4 choices, well, more with all the additional expansions, but in the basic book, you got only like 3 choices. And they're pretty radically different. And for other classes like the wizard, that's more like previous editions. It's you're specializing in a particular school of magic more than anything else, or just the universal. I think it's a very good vehicle for testing whether or not you actually enjoy the character or not. You can always switch. Getting a little ahead of myself, but the multi-class feature in this edition is pretty simple. And you can always, if you're like, oh, I feel like I could be a better rogue than I'd be a warrior or whatever, or I want to add a little more magic to it, etc. And you can pick and choose to a certain extent, and you can change paths, and you're not so heavily penalized by it. You don't lose, because of the way proficiency would work, you're not losing that much effectiveness, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The customization is really in the multi-classic. To take it to the extreme. It's very difficult to customize your character if you're going to be one character continuously. And what I mean difficult in that, you have your 3 choices, but pretty much once you select your choice, at 3rd level, everybody else who's going to select that choice is similar to you. You're not that much different than anybody else, unless you pick a different something else to multi-class in. So the customization part is in the multi-classing for 5th edition.
So for customization, as I guess most people know, I like to play wizard. And some other there.
You're a melee master.
I play cleric and I play wizard. For the cleric, yeah, there's some good customizations. For the wizard, I thought the customizations and the like kind of the subclass, the kits as they used to call them back in the day, they're underwhelming in the main book and even in some of the other books. I mean, the one I really wanted to play was from Unearthed Arcana 30. That was the Lore Master. It was very interesting. They never put that out, and they canceled it from getting released. That was the one that you could actually change your fireball to an acid ball and things of that nature. That sounded interesting, but the rest of them, meh. And I'm not a multi-classer. I like to play a straight-up one class. Unless I'm in Dark Sun, which doesn't have a 5th edition, you don't do multi-classing. You just go straight up all the way to 20 and see what you got.
It's coming.
But
Go ahead, Boris.
Yeah, but I mean, I have to say that they, for whatever reason, because they made the customization as being a multi-classing, really your customization becomes into the role-playing aspect of it. So you customize with. Because there isn't a difference like in previous editions. Oh, I'm specializing only in longsword, or you specialize in swords or melee weapons. So there's a lot of role-playing customization allowable, but that has to sort of work out with the GM as well, because the GM can break or make your customization depending on the magic items they give you when it comes to role-playing customization in those manner.
But here's the flip side of that. I remember in previous editions where when you specialize, we'll take the fighter fighter classes, when you get like something like weapon focus. In previous edition,
right.
Weapon focus was a singular weapon type,
right.
Which is very, very constricting for the GM. Now, if he randomly rolls whatever, we beat a dragon, okay, I'm specialized in long swords, great, and they find an axe. Oh, shit, I'm out of luck, aren't I? So I'm out of luck. I'm like,
so that does
now
make
it's
a
like,
difference.
pick up any weapon. I'm good at all weapons, and now he can drop anything he wants, and I can find it useful.
Well, so do remember, in 5th edition, one of the things that most fighter types have, specifically fighters, paladins, and rangers, get weapon type. Basically, they get a weapon or a specialization that they can choose, a combat specialization. And those can be based in one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons, shields, defense, ranged weapons, and things like that. And that has nothing to do with your character's, let's just call it subclass, that you will be taking. For most classes, it's at level 3. There are ones that happen at level 1 and 2. Just
fighting style.
Fighting style. The fighting style does make a big difference in customization if you're playing a martial character. One thing that a lot of people, that you guys didn't really mention as much, where most of the character customization comes is in spellcasting. When you're a spellcaster, you get to choose your spells, you get to choose how you're going to cast and what kind of spellcaster you're going to be. Whether you're a wizard, a warlock, a sorcerer, a cleric, or a bard, because remember, in this edition, and it's one of the few times it's happened, bard is a full caster. You do get more options as that caster to be able to play around. Now, I also do agree with Boris that the biggest issue I have with 5th edition is once you've picked your 3rd level specialization, you're done. Yep. That character class, you are done picking specializations. Do remember, in 5th edition, under the feat section in the player's handbook, it says this is a optional ability for your GM to decide to give you to do at all.
Yeah, feats are optional.
Feats are optional. You know what else it says? It says magic items are optional. I don't understand some of their concepts in that. And I mean, they do say, like in the books, they also say, well, you should have rare magic items available starting at this level. You should have this amount of like these magic items available at this level. But that's actually my biggest problem with the book in general. And I'll get back to that a little later when we get into our overall thoughts on the edition.
So the customization is mostly in, once you set on your path, it's pretty much set unless you change course correct or build a class, not just a class, but you build a character with a combination of different classes to gain a certain goal at the end of the line, at the end of your career. Like if you, customization with feats, assuming they're allowed. There's some of the feats are actually touch on that. Some of the feats are actually, a lot of them are here in this one are like combination feats. In previous editions, they'd be like one thing. You got one particular item, or one particular ability, or this is why I always hated the negation of a class hindrance. I'm like, I know there's exceptions to the rule, but there's like, come on, there's a hindrance there for a reason. But it is what it is. But in 5th edition, the feats are often like combinations. Like a 2-weapon fighting one, for instance, just as has a bonus to armor class as well as the ability to add damage on the offhand. It has multiple. Some of them have multiple effects, and thus those feats are actually useful.
But they have to do they have to do that, and they're still in a way I feel are still not as powerful for what you're giving up. You're giving up a stat increase.
Yeah.
And that's why they have to be multiple, because look, increasing your dex to get you an extra bonus is huge. Not only is it's your dex save bonus, it's all your skills bonus and that utilizes dex. It's an armor class bonus. So giving that up, getting 2 is in my opinion is still just a minor substitute for that stat bonus.
Depends as well. There's still a cap on how high a character can go in terms of their stats, and there's always items that can increase those stats, so you're not actually giving it up. If later on, if they both allow feats and magic items, you can theoretically say, okay, I know I won't be able to hit the cap right now. Let's say because I need like maybe 2 feats that I know that are going to make my character that much more effective in whatever I'm doing. But then I'm like, I can compensate with an item later on. It may be arrogant to think that, that it exists, but so what? You're building a character with no idea.
Yeah.
You're realistically, if you're creating you don't know as a novice that you're gaining abilities unless you're in like an academy where you can look up the curriculum. You have no freaking clue what your class should get at higher levels. You realistically shouldn't. As a fighter, all you know is I'm getting better at fighting. I get more experience. Well, I don't know if I can do these maneuvers unless I happen to find a master. You know what I'm saying? So
no, I understand that, but I still challenge you to pick any feat that is better than an increase in a stat.
Sentinel.
Any one feat that's better.
Sentinel easily. You can Sentinel, the fighter feat can shut down. It basically it can literally make or break attack. You remember that it had two abilities. The first one was if the guy moves, he gets, unless he has mobility. I'm not sure if mobility cancels that out, but so long as he moves, you get attack opportunity. If you hit with that attack opportunity, his speed goes to 0. He can't escape you. That means he can't go around you.
Okay.
Beat up your species. That one.
And that's all you get with Sentinel, right? Whereas if I increase my strength, I get the +1 to hit. I get the bonus to the strength save. And any feat related to strength, I increase in the roll. So I don't know. I mean, I just named 3 bonuses for that 1 bonus from the feat.
So I named 2. Mine's the attack opportunity you get.
Yeah.
And one is as soon as you hit him.
Right.
It's not perfect, but it does your. All right. The added benefit of this, if a guy's going past you, says your tank is you're the paladin or whatever in the front, and your squishy's in the back. Your cleric, your rogue, whatever else, and they're casting spells to help you. You don't want them to get hit. If the other guy goes around you and hits them, you failed in your job. That extra 1 point of damage you did to them isn't going to make or break. Maybe it will. Maybe you'll kill him out of that. But isn't it better to stop him in his tracks so he can't move and get past you? Unless he gets pissed off and hits you, which is what you're supposed to be doing. The extra 1 point of damage isn't going to make that much difference. Unless it's like the one that kills him.
No, I understand. But I'm just saying overall, it's a unique circumstances. The circumstances has to occur for the feat to be utilized, whereas the bonus and the characteristics is always in effect.
True.
This is, by the way, one of the reasons why the customization is something we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Feats do make a big difference. Some of these feats are very helpful. I like the idea of taking feats. But the thing is, you can get to your max stat relatively quickly by taking 2 stat boosts. From there, you can start taking feats. Or you can start taking feats earlier in order to make it so that you can, because you don't care about having that 20. An 18 is just fine. And that's going to be a difference of opinion in player. So customization in that way is fine. One problem I have is we're talking about feats. There's only 3 pages of feats in the player's handbook.
True.
There's only 2 pages of feats in Xanathar's. The feats in general are a little on the weak side. Like, there's about 10 really good feats. And that's really about all you got. There's your power attack based feats. There's your defense feats. You can get a bonus to going to alertness. You can get extra skills. You can get extra languages. There's some great feats out there. But the fact that you have to give up a stat bonus for it, I think, is kind of unfair. But that's, again, going to be based on the player. It's going to be based on how the GM decides to do it. It's one of the reasons why most of my 5th edition games roll for stats instead of using the base stat modifiers. Because the base stat modifiers, you can have 2 decent stats and 3 crappy stats and a mediocre stat. You're kind of screwed if you go for the base stats. Like, if you want to be a well-rounded character, you just can't.
Yep.
But then again, it comes down at that point to role-playing. And no edition is specifically going to be good or bad for role-playing. It's going to be based on the way that the GM plays the game and the way the players decide to play their characters.
Yep.
Does anyone have any last thoughts on customization before we move on?
Nope.
All right. So why don't we go ahead and talk about our next thing, which is going to be spellcasting. How do we think spellcasting works for this edition compared to others?
All right. Well, the spellcasting is very similar to prior editions, as in the type of routine. You need parts and material components. Although they give you the power to use a focus instead of a lot of material components in this edition. Otherwise, the spells, some of them are good, some of them are worse than prior editions. That's usually how they balance things around when they have a new system. Some spells are just too or overpowered from prior editions, and they want to lower it. Sometimes they do too much, and it gets a big nerf. And some of them, they're regular stays like Fireball and Lightning Bolt. In the Wish spell, they're always there and usually pretty the same or a little bit less powered. I mean, this one in 5th edition, they did lower the power of the Wish. That used to be able to do 9th level spells and basically major reality altering. And here it's a little bit, you got a lot of restrictions and negative effects if you try to really do the reality altering part.
So this is, I have to say that the spell power level, and the reason they change it is depending on how they view the monsters, because most of those power levels that you're talking about, they're not the utility spells, because that's the imagination of how you utilize the utility. It's the damaging spells, the spells you use in combat, and whether they raise or lower the power level of the spells really depends on how they create the monsters, for the system. But my issue with the spells isn't the spells themselves, because I think they're appropriate for what the monsters are in the monster manual, and they're comparable to what you need to defeat them. My real issue is the benefit of the spellcaster is that at higher levels they have how long can they last? How many fights can they last before you are forced to take the long rest, right? Because it's the same issue with every single edition. Once I run out of my spells, I have to stop and sleep, which is your long rest. And I feel they really nerfed the spellcasters in this edition by reducing the total number of spells that they have at the higher levels. In other words, a higher level spellcaster can last the same number of fights as a lower level spellcaster, and that doesn't give you a benefit of, we can go through 4 or 5 encounters before I can. I'm just saying before I can rest. Just because I'm higher level, whereas at 10th level I can only go through 3 encounters, and that I think is what um, really reduced the effectiveness of the spells, not so much the spells themselves.
So possibly as well. We might go with a solution at the end of this, but it's like basically the long rest benefits mostly most other classes in terms of hit points, but not necessarily spell recovery, other than the Warlock, which recovers everything after a short rest, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing I will mention about that is do remember that in this edition, unlike prior editions, they did buff up as you get more powerful, your cantrips get more powerful.
Yeah.
So you can just use cantrips. And if you're playing a character class, you can make it so that you can add your stat modifier to cantrips, things like that, if you're worried about something like that happening. And that is a good point that in 5th edition, you really don't get more than 3 of any spell slot, and the high-level spell slots, you really only get 1, which is a huge difference. And that is kind of annoying to deal with. My biggest problem with 5th edition spellcasting is why is Detect Magic a first-level spell?
That should be a cantrip.
It should be a cantrip. It's always been a cantrip. Why is it a first level spell? And the answer that some people are going to say is, well, you could just take 10 minutes and do it as a ritual. It's like, look, if you think about what's actually going on in combat, it's like, all right, I need to find out if this is magical to see if it's going to kill us or not. Let's stop for 10 minutes. Give me a moment.
Let's ritual it. Everybody, come on, join in.
10 minutes. 10 minutes. Oh, I hate it when people... I watch some games sometimes, and people are like, "Oh yeah, no worries. I'll just ritual cast this thing while we're in the middle of combat." We're in the middle of combat. You can't ritual cast it. I'll just ritual cast this right after combat. Where things are coming right after us, like we're in the middle of running. I'm gonna ritual cast Detect Magic to see if any of these weapons are magical. See if we can make ourselves more powerful. It's oh my god. Why is it a first level spell? Okay, past that. The cantrips, I do believe, solves at least some of the problem of not being able to go for as long. Wizards have the ability to get back a spell after a short rest. I feel like short rests take too long. They're an hour. They're, again, like, you can't reasonably do them in a dungeon, but that's going to be based on your GM more so than anything else. Overall, I agree mostly with what everyone's saying. In addition, in this edition, in general, spellcasting is fine. They nerfed some of the more powerful spells from previous editions. They needed to haste. But in general, everything is relatively fine. Fireball actually technically got more powerful as you cast it at higher levels.
Yeah.
A lot of spells, combat spells, they're fine. They didn't really, like, the problem I have with a lot of it is basically that they decided to... They made the biggest problem that I have in general with 5th edition is the oversimplification. And they did a lot of simplification in 5th edition spellcasting. And that's really where we have to go with it. It's the simplification overall. And for a lot of people, that's a positive thing. It made it so more people can get into the game. But for people who have been playing for as long as we have, especially people who are mathematically inclined, it makes it a little bit boring.
Yeah.
And the one big negative that they made psionics more spells, more like spells. Actually, they are.
There's a little disclaimer here. None of the rest of us give a shit about that. So his opinions on psionics are his own, and none of the rest are board and stated. Gives
I
a
love
crap.
psionics.
Moving along, does anyone have any last minute things they wish to talk about on spells?
No.
And actually, most of the psionic abilities are abilities. Playing the fighter psionicist is fantastic, and the abilities basically make you like a Jedi. It's great. I love it. I'm playing it in one of my games. Moving along, after spells, we basically need to get on to combat. One of the main things I want to bring about on combat before I send it to you guys is they, again, did kind of simplify combat. Technically, there is no rule for having flanking. Most people do a house rule on it where you either get +2 when you flank or you get advantage when you flank. Advantage is a little strong, but honestly, for a lot of characters, when they roll really poorly, like me, you need the advantage to even have a chance to hit because it is what it is.
Well,
the other thing is they gave every character the technical mobility because you can break up your attacks. If you have multiple attacks in a round, you can attack, move, attack, move.
You get a spring attack. Spring attack.
Yes,
is the one
everyone gets the equivalent of spring attack
Yeah.
from previous editions, where you can move, attack, and so on and so forth. Most character classes, or many offensive character classes, martial get two attacks, fighters get 3, and if you really go that far, you get up to 4.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you can do with that. The other major change, at least to 5th edition, that some of us may like or may not like, is how they did attacks of opportunity. You don't get an attack of opportunity unless someone leaves your threatened square. Now, what that means is they can dance around you, and you'll never get an attack of opportunity. They can just go la 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 running around you, and you never get an attack of opportunity.
Yeah.
As long as they stay in your threatened square. Which, funny enough, it means if you're wielding a polearm, your threatened square is 10 feet, so they can go further from you without you getting an attack of opportunity, and that makes 0 sense.
That is
So,
yes.
play with that and go ahead, give your opinions on combat.
Right. So my biggest issue with combat is that by them trying to simplify and saying that advantage or disadvantage is just rolling 2 dice and taking the highest or the lowest, really takes away from people like Jonathan, who even when rolling 2 dice will roll a 1 and a 2 and miss horribly.
Well, Jonathan was obviously fated to be a caster. That's as simple as that. the dice gods do not frown on Jonathan for quite some time. We know another person like that as well, who's we'll not name, but he always rolled pretty badly. So it's destiny. Just simply says, you know what, you should be in the front. Stay here and do smart.
And what do you mean that dice? And what do you mean that dice gods? We're talking physical and digitally. It's both.
Actually, my digital dice gods are worse than my physical ones are. I had a game a couple of weeks ago where I literally missed. I had the highest plus attack, 5th edition, at level 7. I have a plus 10 to hit on my attack roll, which is gigantic.
Yeah, very good.
4 out of 5 rounds, I rolled a 5 or less because of that. I needed to roll 5 or less to miss because the AC, we're level 7. A plus 10 hit is gigantic. Most of the other players have plus 7s.
Yeah. Did you have advantage?
Yeah.
Ranged character, no advantage.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, people. I mean, I understand why they did it. It's a simplified version. You don't have to do around with all of that. But I'm sure Jonathan will agree. Getting a +4 bonus over the equivalent of rolling another die is probably better in his mind.
Yeah, but in previous editions, you never got that much of a bonus for tacticals.
No. I'm just.
Yeah, I know.
Oh no, I'm happy with advantage. Advantage is usually the way that I'm gonna hit. Yeah. Because it's going to be it's 2 dice and it's digitally and it's one of them's a 5 and one of them's an 11. It's the 11's good enough to hit.
Right.
The combat system works for what it is. I mean, what you really want. It wasn't such a tremendous chore in previous editions anyway. I mean, 1st and 2nd edition was basically you hit, you're let's attack, let's hit, and you didn't have to worry about attacks of opportunity. Only 3rd edition came with some more stuff and sheer number of feats. 4th edition we don't mention, and 5th edition it's sort of like a hodgepodge of lessons learned and a basic framework of the system itself, and they just did away with all the numbers. The good old GM screens, they had all those wonderful numbers for combat and
right.
They just said, all right, they have the same situations, whether it's flanking, the guy's prone or whatever else, but now it's just advantage, disadvantage. Yes,
but how else am I going to utilize my math and accounting degree in the role-playing game?
Wow. Unless there's a rolling, when you actually roll to see exactly what advantage bonus against. Who knows? Well, that's the idea, though. I got you flanking. What's my bonus? Let me roll a 2d6. Oh, I got 10. I got plus 10 on this attack. Ah!
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm glad that that's not something that happens. John, what are your thoughts?
So D&D has always been about, fast combat. Like, you don't want to sit around for hours, unlike some other games that are, just one combat is like an hour and a half. It's just too long. D&D has always been about, make it quick, get it over with, do your damage, get hit, die, whatever. just don't waste like a gazillion hours in the combat phase, and do more role playing or strategic planning instead. So I think it's fine.
I always liked it when in a single session, say a single session lasts 4 hours or something, you can get at least 2 combats in, and they are relatively fast, not like an hour long each, but something reasonable. The boss battles, those should be the ones that are the longest. That should last an hour, fine. But general wandering encounter or something like that should be like, boom, let's get it done in like 20, 30 minutes.
One thing I'm going to mention about that is it's going to be dependent on how many players you have in your game for that.
Yeah.
When you have a small number of players, combats usually will go faster. I'm currently in a game that, depending on the day, will have between 6 and 9 players. And combats generally take between an hour and a half and 2 hours, and I will literally just sit there and just do other things while combat's going on. Because I know what I'm doing, so my combat portion, especially when I roll a 2 and a 3 for my attack rolls, actually I don't have advantage, so it's just when I roll a 2 for my attack rolls, my turn is I move here, I attack, I miss, alright, my turn's over. So when other people don't know what they're doing yet or are new to the game, it takes longer. But again, this is not the edition's fault. It's just the way things go. All right, moving on. I want to stay with combat for a little bit because I want to talk about combat balance. Do we think 5th edition has a good combat balance for fighting against higher level creatures, lower level creatures, many creatures, single creatures, things like that? My opinion on this is that if you are good at what you're doing, you can fight things much higher level than you without any trouble. I've done it on multiple occasions where as a level 10 character, I can take on a CR 18. So the CR system is a little unbalanced towards the players being able to do things because they didn't increase the power level of the monsters by enough. Now they can hit like a truck, but if you have a good party that knows what they're doing, you're probably still going to be okay. You have to do a lot of overbalancing to make the game fair. However, I don't think this is a bad thing because I believe, once again, that if you built your character correctly and things like that, being able to feel heroic is the reason why we play these games. So the ability for me as a level 12 character to take on a CR 20 dragon feels real good.
I think that's true. Remember the CR in this edition goes up to well over 20. What's it up to, like 25 or 28, something like that? Pretty high. So it's obvious. So it's already built into the system that obviously easy counter is somewhat it's a couple levels lower than the party level, average party level. That between your party level and maybe 2 or 3 higher is relatively tough encounter, and maybe 4 or 5, maybe even 6 encounters would be considered a tough encounter or so. So I don't know if did you solo that? You were attacking it with a party that level in that example, or was it just you who happened to be separated from the party?
It was me and the party. We were fighting 2 CR 20 dragons, and I fought one of them, and the party fought the other.
Oh, how many else was the other? How many people were in there?
5.
Okay.
Other players.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah. So
there's a very specific circumstance behind it.
Right.
And
I totally,
the idea that if you play it correctly, wizards are broken. Moving on.
Right. Yes, I agree that the point of the game is to feel heroic, but and this is a big but. When and this is from a GM's perspective, when you're setting up your campaign, and you have your leader, your big bad villain.
Yeah.
Right? The fun, in my opinion, is, and it's both from the player's perspective and the GM perspective, is when they see the villain early on, they go, look, we can't handle them. Let's run. If you can handle, and you see that you handle a 10th level CR 18 or 17 creatures, and can defeat them, that fear is gone. And the whole point of the heroic is not just being heroic and being high powered. It's the journey. It's the, look, we know we can't defeat them. Let's go over here, become a little better, or find a magic item that's going to help us, or all of this. If all the great heroic stories, whether what you read, it's always begins with people running away from the main villain early on, until they either acquire power or gain certain magic items or find somebody special. And that aspect, I think, is really taken away significantly if at 10th level you can take on a CR 18 creature.
I agree with you. However, there's certain modifying circumstances, mitifying circumstances. Terrible wording. There's certain circumstances that change this whole thing, and again, that's going to be partially based on the GM. It's going to be partially based on how the party plays in general. Because if you have a party of people that will go and fight no matter what, you kind of have to cater to that. Like, I played with that particular group and said, we should run away, and all of them said no. Like, there's nothing that you can do about it if you're playing with people that don't understand the idea of drama in role-playing games. So, although that is a nice point, that has nothing to do specifically with the edition. It's based on the players you're playing with. And again, if you have a very large party, sometimes that'll be the case. If you're playing, and also these dragons I'm talking about were not the big boss. They were actually the thing before the big boss. The big boss knocked out several players very quickly. That is beside the point, though. But obviously your interpretation is completely valid, that you don't like the idea that you can kind of fight anything at any time, depending on the circumstance. But you can't necessarily fight anything at any time, because you do have to have a couple of people who know what they're doing in order to have at least a chance at that.
But
I'm going to say this. I agree with both in that regard. I agree on Boris's side from the GM perspective. That's more along the line of campaign progression than anything else, I believe. And I also agree with Jonathan in terms of feeling heroic. That, in that case, is not necessarily about numbers in that regard, though. It's more about accomplishments. If you go and say, for instance, you're a low level, and you can certainly feel heroic, and you're part of in this town or city, and there's this criminal mastermind, like a Moriarty type. You never see him, but you know his presence is there. You know his gambling, his prostitution, whatever else, smuggling, and throughout the several adventures or levels, you get closer and closer and closer to him. So when the climactic battle occurs, and by the way, just to let you know, Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty only met once in the original Arthur Conan Doyle run, only once. So this is one of the things where, all right, the big boss isn't super high level. He's not super tough, but he's been such a tremendous foe. He hires muscle. Okay, so you got to beat up his bodyguard before you get to him, whatever it is. And that point, it's your point. He's done so much, and he has done so much evil in his time, and you finally knock him down. You can either kill him right there, which most parties probably would, or bring him in because there's a huge reward for his head, whatever it is, or one dead or alive for a trial and such. You felt heroic. You saved the city from a menace that has done so much evil for so long. And vice versa. I mean, also, if you're like, it's not about the numbers in that regard. It's about accomplishments. As they say, milestones. One of the things about the system has for two experience traits. One is milestones. You accomplish, say, 5 5 adventures and you get a level, versus experience points, which is what they did in the old school first, second edition. You kill this creature, that's why they have experience points under each monster. But people didn't like that because they also had additional role-playing awards and like, oh, I should have this more, and why is he getting more in this? And that brings about bad feelings. But the point is, heroism is about accomplishments, I think, and I agree with both of you in that regard. You definitely want to feel heroic. You're not a serf. You're not a jabroni. You're a guy who eventually changes the world. Will be sung about you. The bards, whether it's your own bard or other bards, will sing your praises for generations to come. You're the Achilles. You're the Beowulf. I mean, you're the guy who people will be singing about years ago. But you have to get there first. And those guys only killed a couple people. They only killed a couple of monsters and they got famous. I mean, you guys are killing monsters every week.
And should you be able to, attack, be at 10th level and damage a 20th level creature? Yes, of course you should. Should you be able to beat him? No. You should not almost have no chance to beat him. That's like a white belt beating a black belt. It's not going to happen. You might hurt him. You might injure their toe, but he's going to kill you.
Well, so we have some differing opinions on that for encounter levels and things like that. Why don't we go ahead and finish us off and say, overall, what are your thoughts on the edition? Positive, negative? Is there anything else that we didn't really mention that you want to go over?
I'm going to start with that as far as spells and recovery spells. I think if the number of spells you're going to utilize per combat and per say for day before you get a long rest, you're still going to have, say, for instance, a lower level, say less than 7 or 8 or whatever it is. You can get like 3 combats in before you have to take a rest. Versus the higher levels, you still have to take a rest after 3 combats. Then I understand the frustration with that, because that means, okay, it feels like you haven't really progressed. Yes, I'm doing more damage, but the creatures can take the same, proportionally the same amount of damage. I'm fighting the same fight. However, I think also, that can be rectified a little bit with the short rest maybe, and items that help you recover more, or boost the power of magic items at higher levels, so that you don't have to always rely on your spells immediately, your own personal spells. The staff can actually, or the magi or whatever else, can actually do some reasonable spells at your level against opponents and make it more expedient that way. But as an addition in and of itself, I understand why it is created the way it is. It was a great marketing move. The game itself, in terms of mechanics, it does simplify things. The whole the list of conditions, for instance, both this game and Pathfinder 2 has these wonderful conditions. And for D&D 5th edition, it's a no-brainer. If you ever have some sort of tactical or some sort of, I don't want to say advantage because that's part of the system itself, but if you have an advantage, you get advantage on the dice rolls. If you have a disadvantage, you have disadvantage on the dice rolls. Obviously, that makes sense. With others, you have a particular modifier that you have to remember. But that's apples and oranges. Coming from previous editions, right from the beginning all the way through AD&D 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, as a system, I liked it a heck of a lot better than 4th. I liked the customization in 3.5 better. They managed to make the feats, they went a little bit overboard in 3.0, and then they cut it back a bit on 3.5. I would like more feats in 5th edition, quite honestly. I agree there in terms of how useful they are. But I think they also, the feats are the only thing that really separates the. I mean, if you go in your separate classes, if 2 of you are playing the same class, the only thing different about you really is the feats. Spellcasters, there's obviously choices you play choose, but it doesn't seem like you're playing really different inside the same profession. Overall, I think it's an improvement. I understand why it's the way it is and how it's simplified. I'll give it, if I have to give it a rating, say out of 10, I'll give it a 7.5.
That's fair. That's fair.
Right. I'll go next. So the number one thing I have to say why the system is fantastic is it really brought Dungeons and Dragons into the mainstream. Now, if you tell somebody I play Dungeons and Dragons, you have more than a 70 or even maybe 80% chance of somebody understanding what you mean. Whereas in the past, whereas in the past, forget about saying it in the 80s. You talk to a church lady and you're a Satan worshiper. And, in the 90s.
Well, look at the Dungeon Master's Guide back then. It was a freaking big devil, red devil. I mean, what are you...
Yes. No. I get it.
I'm asking for that one.
So the benefit, whether it's the simplicity of it or the bringing it into mainstream and a lot of people understanding it and playing it, I think makes the system phenomenal. Being the sort of the old grandfather at this point of
don't go that far.
I like customization, and the biggest weakness of the system, I feel, it took us back to first edition and a little bit to second edition, where there is almost no difference. If I play a fighter that is sword and board, I will be exactly like every other fighter that's sword and board. Yeah. If I play a healing cleric, I will be pretty much like any other healing cleric out there. And that, look, it's a preference aspect. I like customization. I like to think each individual is unique, and I like to think that each individual adventurer, look, he doesn't have to be unique to the point where there's nobody exactly like him. But I would like to be at least 1 in 5, 1 in 10 on finding somebody else that's just like me. Not everybody else. But overall, the system is definitely simple and easy to use. I can't speak how fantastic it is that it brought D&D into the mainstream. My only significant issue is the customization. But given that, and based upon what a rating system, I would say that I'll agree with Mike. It's 7.5, 8 out of 10.
And I skipped 3 and 4, 4th edition. So I went from 2nd edition, Advanced D&D, to the 5th edition. Playing different games, obviously of other types. So I think this edition is for positives. It's better than 2nd edition. It's a cleaner system. And it does play well, and it brought a lot of the D&D into the mainstream and tabletop role-playing games into the mainstream. For negatives, it's still lacking some stuff that the prior editions have. Psychic powers that are real psionic. It's also slow. It's slow walking the releases of their campaign worlds, which really those should be like on an accelerated rate to get re-releases. They don't have to go all in. Just 1 or 2 books on each campaign world that they've had prior, and then create some new ones like they've been doing with the crossover with Magic the Gathering and things of that nature. So I'd like to see them really go do at least 4 campaign worlds of old re-released in 5th edition. Obviously, the favorite Dark Sun is going to need them to also fix the other problem, psionics. So on a scale, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
All right. To finish off my opinion, I reiterate a lot of what Mike and Boris said. I did not play a lot of the early editions. I really started playing with 3.5, which is means I started playing 20 years ago. But really, the thing is that 5th edition, I don't like as much of the oversimplification. Now, I don't agree necessarily with Boris that everyone who's Sword and Board is the same Sword and Board, because you have your partial customizations in each character class. Like your choice at 3rd level does make a big difference. So a Sword and Board guy who goes champion is going to be very different from a Sword and Board guy who goes, any of the other ones, really, especially like if you go with the arcane character build. So there's lots of different. The customization, my problem is, stops after 3rd. If 2 people make the same character with the same character customization, they do feel like the same thing. I mean, feats make minor changes, but the big thing about that is replayability. Can I play a fighter and then in my next campaign play another fighter and have it feel different enough so that I feel it's worth doing? The answer to that's sort of. With the books as they come out, you do get more options. But as an example, I've played Bard on multiple occasions in 5th edition with different builds, and both of them worked. They played very differently. But could I say the same thing if I played a Rogue? Probably not. Could I say the same thing if I played a Monk? Probably not. Barbarian. Like, the casters have enough customization so that you can do multiple things. The martial classes are not as much so. My biggest gripe with 5th edition is the wording in a lot of their books. Their wording is awful. Their FAQs are mediocre. You have to go on forums and hope that some of their people, like the people involved in 5th edition, answer questions to make sure you know exactly how something is supposed to work, because their wording is abysmal. Warlock specifically has terrible wording in a lot of places. I don't want to get into arguments with this. I've made this argument. Several people have said, but that's not the way it works. But if you go strictly based on the word in the book, they're wrong. Doesn't matter. Do I like 5th edition? Yeah. Do I like 3.5 and Pathfinder 1 more? Yeah. Pathfinder 2 more? They're different. I probably like 5th edition more overall at this point. I would give this edition probably an 8 out of 10. Like, sticking along the lines of what everyone else is kind of going with. It's a good edition. I do wish there were... I agree that I do wish that their worlds would come out a little faster. I do wish they would put out a few more books. But because 3.5 and 4.0 put books out every month, and they kind of got to the point where they just made everything overpowered, I understand why they're not doing that now. So, overall, we've said 7, 7.5, 8 as our rating. So, obviously, we think the edition is good. Is there any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, it's overall for the hobby itself, it's a definite positive.
Oh yeah.
More eyes on the product is always good. It's healthy. That means the company will keep going and keep making stuff. What's already been said is, yeah, I wish they came up faster, and I definitely understand why they're taking their time. But there's in between going too fast and too many books versus too slow and too little material to keep interest. They need to strike a balance, and I personally don't feel they have reached that balance yet. Their editions only have a lifespan. Every edition has a lifespan, and generally, roughly 10 years is generally the lifespan. And we're already over. This came out in 2014, 2015, thereabouts? 5th edition, I think. So we're already over the halfway mark for this edition. That's why I'm scared that if they do come up with additional, say, Dark Sun books or whatever else, or spell, whatever, jammers or anything like that, by the time they come up with it, we're in another freaking edition again. Those are obsolete. I don't like that at all. But as for overall, it's a positive for me.
Yeah, I think they should slow walk any type of core books, like, Tasha's and things of that nature. But the campaign worlds, they need to pump them out at a much quicker pace. They shouldn't be introducing more overpowered stuff in there. They should be just introducing the campaign world and how it was when it was created and all the additions they had through the different editions. kind of combine them and make a 5th edition version of it, just like they're doing with Ravenloft. It's
Yep.
and just keep going.
Yep. No, I definitely agree about the. I think that they were too quick with 3.5 and 4, and they are too slow here. They have not come up with that well balance that really I feel would be comfortable. People could enjoy and provide more entertainment to the people that are now entering the hobby.
All right, well, there we go. So more books. Obviously, more books would make some of us happy, even though spending more money not necessarily making us happy. But that's where we are. Obviously, this again means that we like the system enough. So if you agree, disagree, let us know in the comments. If you like the video, like it. If you say that we rambled a little bit too much, you're right. But
That's what editing's
either
for.
way, like it anyway, please. Subscribe, and for me at least, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Uh,